Hi, this is Harry Manx, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Come back here and let's begin again.
Oh, look, just to begin, do you have an earliest musical memory from your childhood when music started to have an impact on you?
Well, like most kids growing up, like in the 60s, I came aware of music, and in those times it would be Elvis Presley and the Beatles and Little Stevie Wonder, things, guys that we would see in the movies at the little cinema, and that became my first exposure to music.
You've certainly been a well-travelled musician over the years. You've spent extensive periods in Japan, India, around Europe. Have you ever stopped to ponder where you'd be at now musically and professionally had you stayed in Canada during all those years instead?
Yes, I sometimes think about that. I think your music is really shaped by the journey, that you have in life. So my music definitely reflects that journey. If I had stayed here, I might be like a lot of musicians, really very technically great, but not that different or unique. And that, I think the exposure to my travels sort of broadened my view of the world and music.
You're still very well travelled. You tour quite extensively. You spend a lot of time on the road. Is writing songs something you can do while you're on the road travelling, or is that something best left to when you've got downtime at home?
Well, usually at home, I can focus on it. I work with words, and then I work with music, and then I try to bring the two together at some point. I did it intensely, like 14 CDs in the last 14 years, but I don't know what's the next project. I'm letting it cook a little bit this time and letting creativity emerge on its own without there being a schedule.
Okay. You worked as a roadie, and you did mix sound also for some of the legendary blues musicians in your early days. That must have been a great learning experience and a huge influence on the music that you make now.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening. I remember a Saturday afternoon matinee show in downtown Toronto, and I was 15, and I went in there. It was all dark inside. It takes a minute for your eyes to adjust. And then I was watching Buddy Guy and Junior Wells on the stage, and I took that scene in, the look of the guys, the confidence and the swagger, and the music just getting right under my skin. And I looked at the people, all these characters with these amazing different clothes and looks. And that made a huge impact on me. After that, the blues was right up there in the top of my list of things to do and be.
What about the years you spent busking? How do you look back on that in terms of learning how to relate to an audience? Yeah,
there's something about playing on the street. You learn a lot about interacting with a crowd. You have to hold them. They didn't buy a ticket. So you have to hold them with your music. And there's something that's, you learn it intuitively. At first, it's very difficult and you can't manage. But after a while, even when you're setting up, people start to get attracted to sit and watch you. So you learn a lot playing on the street. It's a great freedom. There's tons of obstacles, so it's not all roses. But it's as a lifestyle goes, I really liked it. I really liked the freedom of it, and I felt it was all down to me, what I did or didn't do, and I liked that.
You've really only got that brief moment of time to get their attention, haven't you? Because they're a mobile audience, really.
Yeah, that's right. They might just move on. You have to pick your battles, good places at good times. It's quite a science, really, sorting that out, how to do it well. I did it in some big cities. I mean, in Europe, I did it for many years, but in Japan, in Tokyo, for instance, the logistics are quite staggering, just to get out there and play. I don't regret doing it, and I don't. At the same time, I don't miss it because I really like being on the stage now. You don't get rained on, you don't get chased away. It has its perks.
Yeah. Just the same though, where were the most satisfying places to busk?
Well, I used to do a lot in Switzerland. I used to work the nightlife area in Zurich and even work daytimes in other cities in Switzerland. I lived there a few years. Germany, there's some great towns, and I used to go down in the winter to Spain and play. I kind of wandered around. I liked Europe a lot, but I actually spent a long time busking too in Japan, maybe 8-9 years. There's so many wonderful places to go to.
Talk about your initial attraction to Indian music, where it stemmed from, and how those sounds first affected you.
Well, when I was a kid, my father was in the British Navy, and he used to travel a lot. And he came back from India with all sorts of like carvings and stories and a few photographs of the natives. And I was so impressed. He planted the seed. And later on, I became in my late teens, I'm very interested in meditation, and suddenly Indian music arrived, Ravi Shankar, and it was a big awakening. I felt it was very familiar and very attractive. I didn't know anything about it. It all sounded mumble jumble, but I loved it, and I think it drew me towards India. In my early 20s, I was there, and I loved the music.
About the connection between Indian music and blues, can you pinpoint a moment in time when that connection became apparent to you?
Yes, I was living in Rajasthan, and my teacher, Vishwa Mohan Bhatt, a great Indian slide player, he went to America, and he came back, and he was talking about, he just made a record with a fellow named Rai Cooder, and he was saying to me, it was the music like you like, he said to me, because he knew that I was playing blues and I was studying Indian music, and it kind of dawned on me that, yes, that's true, I do like that, but I never assumed that was anything that would work or would be interesting to people, that kind of mixture of East and West music. But when he talked about it and when he played me the music they recorded, I understood that was actually, there was a lot of common ground between those two styles. And I understood the common ground suddenly in a moment. I understood that certain ragas have the same notes as some blues scales, and you can jump back and forth whenever you like if you give yourself that freedom.
That was a wonderful album that he did with Rai Cooder. What was the most important thing you think you learned about Indian music during your time studying with him?
Well, Indian music, it's very challenging. It rides a very high frequency. It has great depth. It's very old. The heart of the music, the heart of the ragas, is the alap, and that's what I focused on. Getting inside the melody and playing that. As far as the speed and the acrobatics, I know that's a great attraction to many. That part of the music I've never excelled at and never been drawn to, but I love the heart of the ragas, and Indian music is next to silence. It's very deep.
You've become synonymous with the instrument, the Mohan Veena. It looks like an extremely challenging instrument to learn. Is it equally as challenging no matter how advanced your guitar playing is?
Yes, it is. The challenge is not the ability to play a slide guitar. The challenge is in knowing and understanding Indian music. It's so complex. You have a set of notes, but you have certain order that you're only allowed to play in. And you have a melody that may go on for a long time, and you have certain places where you can improvise at different speeds. So there's a lot to it, and I realized that the 5 years I spent with Vishwa Mohan Bhatt wasn't enough. It could have been 20, but my clock was ticking. I needed to go back to the West and find my place.
Did learning that instrument alter the way you approach playing conventional guitar?
Definitely. After learning Indian slide, playing blues and stuff like that became easier. It became, I learned how to improvise through learning these, you practice these kind of scales in Indian music, which are very mathematical. Like, you can even get the exercises in numbers, which my teacher wrote for me. And the example would be, he'd give you a scale and he'd say, play, 1 being the first note, 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 6, like this. He would just write out numbers. And so you practice those. And what it does is increases your ability of your mind to muscle ability. So you suddenly, when you have an idea and you want to play something, and even in the blues genre, suddenly your hand moves quick and moves accurately. That's what you learn from studying Indian music.
Now, you lost your Mohan Veena a couple of years ago, had it stolen from the airport. That must have been a gut-wrenching experience for you.
Yes, it was heartbreaking. And then I realized later on that I was getting so much support online. I got an immense amount of support, like 5.5 million people tuned into my Facebook post. And they were looking for it all over the world. And what it did for me was I suddenly wasn't as concerned about that piece of wood and metal, that guitar, because I was so overwhelmed with the support. I understood something like about people's compassion, people that didn't know me, they weren't connected in any way. So that was great. And when I got to the point I was thinking, okay, I'll get a new one, forget it, it's all good. I've got new friends. Suddenly it came back, and when it came back, it sounded better than when I left it with the guys. So it was all, in the end, a good thing.
Yeah, and the power of social media being used for good.
Yes, it was an amazing outpouring of support. Anybody's experienced that from the good side of it, it feels real good, I can tell you.
I've seen you often described as someone who bridges the gap between Eastern and Western music. Was that a musical goal of yours right from the beginning? No, I never saw. I wasn't that insightful. That sort of came about just because I was following my love of blues, and then I loved the Indian music, and I had these two styles in my brain. I think a few like neural pathways got formed between the two, and suddenly my blues sounded a little Indian, and my Indian music sounded very bluesy. Mm-hmm. So there it was, I can't claim that I created that in any way, because Vishwa and Raikuda inspired that in me, but it was a pretty natural fit. Now, Australia's become a regular touring destination for you over the years, and you're about to be here again soon. What do you think it is about Australian audiences that have made that special connection to you?
Yeah, I think that in many ways the audience chooses the artist because I have Australia is such a great place for me to come to and play because the people are receptive. In Canada, my best reception is in Quebec, where they speak French, and my French is terrible. But you don't know why you get chosen in some places. They love you. Other places I can go and knock on the door and there's nobody home. But there's places in the world where they dig what I'm doing, and I'm so happy that those places exist. Australia is definitely right there on that list. Mm.
You established your own record label. Was that something you set up in order to be able to have the artistic freedom to put out the type of records you wanted?
Exactly, yes. I did 3 records with a label, a blues label, and they all did very well. But then when I wanted to do a live album, they weren't interested, and I suddenly realized that I didn't have as much control over my choices as I thought. So I decided to start my own label, and it was very good to do in the business sense, because instead of getting 10% profit from sales as an artist, I was suddenly making 90% profit as a label owner and an artist. So it turned out to be a much better plan, and I eventually got all my CDs back from the record company and put them on my own label. It's something to own your own, intellectual property. I think it's very important.
Absolutely. Is there a typical Harry Manx fan, a certain type that always seems to follow your shows around?
Well, surprisingly enough, I get a higher percentage of women interested in my music than men. I think, they get attracted to my themes, of love and life and loss and gain and matters of the heart. This is the language that women tend to understand, and the guys that get attracted to my music are also generally connected either as musicians or to travels to India and experiences with meditation. And my lyrics sometimes point towards the inner world, which is something I'm very interested in. Without speaking too directly about it, I try to hint at that, and I think people hear that if they listen.
What do you think it is about blues music that seems to transcend generations? I mean, lots of styles come and go, but blues always seems to be there.
Yes, it's true. It's really the sound of the human spirit. Blues. It has a very spiritual context to it because it goes back so far, and it was the only way that black people coming to America as slaves, it was the only voice they had was to sing their troubles out. It was a kind of a release of suffering. So that great depth is not just it's not lightweight. And when people sing blues now, you can feel that history in it. If the artist is able to connect, really deeply with the music, he'll be able to bring that out, that history and that depth. And though it's a song about suffering, which everyone knows something about, at the same time you're listening, your toe is tapping, and you're digging it, and you're going, yeah, that's suffering. I like that. So it's a cool, crazy kind of thing that they've made the journey of suffering into something that you can really groove to.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier there's no immediate plans to record, but is there a stockpile of new songs there?
I'm working on now these days. I'm really inspired again, and I'm working on some stuff, and it's great because if you play for a long time, it just gets easier and easier. And now I'm loving the way the music happens. It was such a struggle in the beginning, but if you get past the struggle, I'm in the good times now where it's a joy to play.
Mm. And just finally, before I let you go, what would be your best piece of career advice for aspiring musicians?
Well, I was watching that Tom Petty documentary the other day, and he was saying something to like advice to musicians, which I really loved, which is like, be yourself, don't worry about the industry, and don't try to win stardom in a contest. Just be yourself, and if people love it, if it's working, it'll happen. If not, then maybe something else.
Yeah, that's great life advice, really. That is.
Yeah.
Harry, thanks so much for your time. You're always so welcome down here in Australia, and we always eagerly await every visit, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again. Thanks for taking the time, John. I appreciate it. Have a safe trip over, and we'll see you. See you soon. All right. Best to you. All the best. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.